It's game day. The room erupts. Someone scored. Someone missed. Someone did something apparently incredible. The people around you are on their feet. And you're sitting there thinking the same thing you think every time. I genuinely don't understand what's happening right now. Not the rules. You could learn those. You mean the feeling, the surge that just hit the room. You didn't get it. And you can't remember a time when you did. You're not broken, and you're not even unusual. Here's what's actually going on. Sports fandom is one of the most widespread social behaviors on the planet. Billions of people across every continent follow teams, watch games, and invest real emotion, sometimes real money, into outcomes that have no direct effect on their lives. According to Gallup, roughly 59% of Americans describe themselves as sports fans, which means about 4 in 10 don't. That's not a small number. Yet in most social settings, workplaces, family, gatherings, first dates, not caring about sports still feels like something you need to explain. So what separates these two groups? Is it personality, upbringing, or is there something deeper, something neurological, that makes sports captivating for some brains and genuinely meaningless for others? To understand why some people don't engage with sports, you first need to understand what happens in the brains of people who do. Because sports fandom isn't just a preference, it's a cascade of neurological events. When fans watch their team score, neuroimaging research shows a burst of activity in the ventral striatum, a region of the brain associated with reward processing. Researchers at Harvard's Intergroup Neuroscience Lab observed this directly using fMRI scans of fans watching game footage, and the response doesn't stop at your own team's success. When fans watched a rival team lose to a third-party opponent, a result with no direct benefit to their own team, the same reward pathways activated. The brain doesn't distinguish between a reward that helps you survive and a reward that comes from watching a team you've adopted beat a team you haven't. And for someone who hasn't adopted any team, none of that circuitry fires. The game on the screen is just people running. But here's where it gets more interesting. The reward isn't just about winning, it's about not knowing whether you'll win. The appeal of sports closely resembles the mechanics of variable ratio reinforcement, the same reward pattern that makes slot machines compelling. Goals and victories are rare enough to be euphoric, and unpredictable enough to keep the brain locked in anticipation. Your dopamine system doesn't just reward the outcome. It rewards the possibility of the outcome. That's why a tied game in the final minutes feels almost unbearable. The uncertainty itself is the drug. And there's one more layer. When you watch an athlete perform a physical action, a free throw, a kick, neurons in your premotor cortex fire as though you were performing that action yourself. A study published in Nature Neuroscience found that professional basketball players could predict the outcome of a free throw more accurately than non-players, because their motor systems were simulating the shot. This means the more physical experience you have with a sport, the more your brain tends to engage when you watch it. If you didn't play, the game is quieter inside your head. Think of two people on the same couch watching the same free throw. One played basketball through high school. Their motor cortex is running a live simulation, calculating the arc, the spin, the release point. The other has no history with the sport. Their brain registers the motion, but there's no depth to the simulation, no prediction, no stakes. So dopamine, mirror neurons, and variable reinforcement explain why sports can grip a brain, but they don't explain why some brains don't get gripped. That requires a different kind of research, not neuroscience, but psychology and sociology. In 1976, psychologist Robert Cialdini ran a series of studies at major American universities and found that after a football victory, students were significantly more likely to wear school-identifying clothing. They used "we" for victories and "they" for defeats, especially when their own self-image had been threatened. Cialdini called this basking in reflected glory. Fans don't just watch a team, they absorb the team into their sense of self. A win becomes their win. A loss stings like a personal failure. And that process of psychological merger doesn't happen overnight. It starts early and it builds through repetition. The social learning pipeline is remarkably consistent. A parent takes you to a game. Your school has a team. Your friends talk about it at lunch. You learn the players, the rivalries, the language. Each step reinforces the next, and each one adds another layer of identity and neurochemical reward. Over time, the team isn't just something you follow. It becomes part of how you define who you are. Research on non-fans confirms this. The strongest predictors of disinterest weren't personality traits. They were social environment, early experiences, and the availability of satisfying alternatives. Underneath all of this lies something even older. Evolutionary psychologists have argued that sports fandom activates a tribal psychology. Humans evolved over hundreds of thousands of years. The tendency to form in-groups and feel suspicion toward outsiders, this isn't learned. It's a deep cognitive pattern. Sports are a modern outlet for coalitional instincts that once served survival. Researchers have noted that men tend to identify more strongly with these tribal group memberships than women, which may partially explain why men are more likely to describe themselves as sports fans, 66% compared to 51% of women. But if you didn't enter that chain, if your early environment didn't involve sports, if your social circles didn't reinforce it, if your brain found its dopamine and identity elsewhere, then the entire system simply didn't activate. Not because something is missing, but because the chain has to start somewhere, and for you, it started in a different place. Here's what the research actually suggests. Sports fandom isn't a casual preference. It's a neurological feedback loop, built on dopamine, mirror neuron simulation, tribal identity, and variable reinforcement, that locks in through early exposures and social learning. People who love sports aren't doing something irrational. Their brains are running a system shaped by evolution, reinforced by culture, and activated by experience. And people who don't care aren't missing that system. The chain simply started somewhere else. Their dopamine found other sources. Their belonging attached to other groups. The neuroscience is the same. The target is different. Among younger Americans, this may be increasingly common. Gallup data shows that adults under 35 are less likely to name a single favorite sport, and roughly 15% name no sport at all. As the number of available identity-forming activities expands, gaming, music communities, online subcultures, creative pursuits, sports fandom faces more competition for the brain's attention and loyalty than at any point in modern history. Knowing this won't change whether you feel the pull of a game or not. But it might change how you think about the person at the party who's perfectly happy just eating the chips. The distinction that matters isn't between sports fans and people who lack something. It's between people whose tribal reward systems found sports and people whose systems found something else entirely. And in a culture that sometimes treats sports indifference as a character flaw, understanding the neuroscience might reframe what not caring actually means. This is part of a larger pattern in how modern life assumes shared interests are default settings, when in reality, what grips us is shaped by biology, exposure, and timing more than we'd like to admit. This is the human frame. Facts first, context always. If this changed how you see something, subscribe. We'll keep going.